ultimately delay the issuance of the GO bond into 2026. We did ask about that, and we're told we could not or did not want to do that. That would delay our payments as part, we could not put our payments as part of the 26 budget if we're to do that, which would then negatively affect the tax rate in 27 and moving forward. So, I wanted to follow back on that because we were asked of that previously. The need for the additional appropriation tonight is simply because we do plan to receive those funds for that GO bond in calendar year 2025. And because we are receiving those funds and will likely issue a payment from those funds, such as the cost of issuance, that's the need for the additional appropriation. So if you want to take any comments from the public, now would be the time, please.
Yep. So there's always a blue sheet when you come to any board meeting, and you can speak on any topic at all. That's later in the agenda. During the public hearing portion of it, anyone, even if you didn't sign up to speak, can come up and ask questions of Dr. Bozeman, of the rest of the staff, regarding that specific topic, which is the GO bond that we are going to vote on later on in the meeting. So I welcome anyone who would like to do that, to stand up. I always give plenty of time for awkward pause, and I see no eye contact. So I am going to assume that no one would like to speak to us tonight on this topic. We have spoken on it before, so understand if a lot of questions have already been asked. Any questions from the board? No. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bozeman. All right, so we will gavel back into our formal board meeting and move on to school board member reports. Can I start at this end of the table, Mr. Schultz?
No meetings here.
Mr. Glick?
The only thing that came up was the first iteration of the referendum survey committee with Ms. Lloyd and myself, and really just kind of going over the nuts and bolts of what the survey may entail and what may be in there. If Ms. Lloyd has anything to add, or Dr. Phillips, have at it. But be on the lookout for the survey coming in your mail here in the next few months. So.
My committees did not meet. There is, November 6th, there will be an ISBA regional meeting that I emailed the board members about, and our local legislators will also be invited to that meeting.
Thank you. I've not had any meetings, but on November 10th, there will be a county redevelopment meeting coming up. Mr. Stenner?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Major?
Yeah, so we had a health trust meeting last week, and I will not speak about that. I'll let that be discussed later. Redevelopment met earlier today, and they did a resolution to recognize the creation of a neighborhood development corporation. So you may hear the CICDC, Columbus, Indiana Community Development Corporation, listed in the future. It's a nonprofit that'll be funded by city TIF money to do local work. And then they also talked about the downtown entrance plaza. They've got somebody that's lined up to do the initial planning over the next few months. And that will then come back with a recommendation and a cost. So those are the two things they talked about tonight.
Ms. Lloyd?
No formal meetings, just a reminder that the Wizards game is coming up in November, and that will support the school foundation. So tickets should be going on sale. There's sponsorship opportunities now. It's a great time for students and staff, so mark your calendars.
Okay, thank you. Next we have cabinet reports. I believe first we have Dr. Stelbaum. And Ms. Keel, sorry, Ms. Keel.
Good evening. Thank you for dedicating time to go over the tentative collective bargaining agreement. We will go over kind of our process, the timeline, and then what we have agreed to. And of course, Mandy and I will share this presentation this evening. So we'll start with our process. We started with informal meetings that began in May. During those informal meetings, we celebrate some of the successes of years past. We talk about our priorities for this specific bargaining term, and we also talk about those long-term sustainable priorities as well. We kicked off our term with the September 8th public input session, which was held by the board. On September 17th, we had our first formal bargaining meeting, and that lasted a day. That is, of course, the collaboration between the CEA bargaining team and the BCSC bargaining team. We held 3 sessions before reaching our tentative agreement on October 1st. And then October 8th, CEA held 2 informational meetings for members with voting that occurred from October 9th to 10th. On October 10th, they ratified the tentative agreement with a positive vote. We are here presenting this TA to you this evening, which is just an informational presentation. And then on October 29th, we will meet again during a special board meeting to approve or ratify the TA to become our collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and first start off by introducing our bargaining teams. So for CEA here with us this evening, we have Mrs. Amy London, myself, Mr. Scott Rayburn, and then also Miss Grace McDougall. She is here. She's hidden. There she is, Miss Grace McDougall, and then Miss Christy Billings, our ISTA UniServe Director. From BCSC, it was Mr. Rich Stenner, Dr. Chad Phillips, Dr. Brett Bozeman, and Dr. Aaron Stahlbaum. Before we actually get into any of the specifics of this year's tentative agreement, I did want to reiterate some of the current and future financial headwinds that we are facing. For this school year, as you know, the ADM, our average daily membership decrease, translates to roughly $1.6 million less in state tuition funding for our education fund. In addition, curricular materials funding is now built into our state tuition dollars, meaning that that same pool of money must also now cover things like textbook fees. And on the local side, our property tax growth, that NAV, or net asset value, is expected to rise only 1.5% instead of the usual 4%. Combined, these factors mean our overall 2026 budget will be lower than in 2025, as has already been presented to you in prior meetings. Also, as mentioned in previous board meetings, under the provisions of Senate Bill 1, many school districts are projected to lose substantial local revenue from property taxes in the coming years. Senate Bill 1's property tax reform provisions reduce the growth and stability of a key local revenue source for our school districts. When combined with possible declining student enrollment and flat or modest state tuition support increases, the capacity of districts to provide meaningful salary growth to teachers presents further challenges, which we have to tackle together. And this tentative agreement is reflective of these headwinds that we're currently facing. Also, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what are considered bargainable topics, again, according to Indiana Code. And so IRB is the Indiana Education Employment Relations Board, who oversees collective bargaining agreements for public school employees within the state of Indiana. And they feel that the compensation plan is truly the heart of the CBA. But we do have the ability to bargain some other wage-related fringe benefits, for example, like the number of sick days or the percentage of health insurance premiums that teachers would pay versus the corporation would pay. Some of the other items that are listed there as examples of things that we don't bargain, for example, Appendix B and C positions, those are our coaching stipends or co-curricular stipends, are things that we can discuss, and we do have formal established collaboration discussions between BCSC and CEA to discuss those, and have even created several committees then to then further dive into those topics and address those.
Thank you. We want to go over our successes from 2017 to this current collective bargaining agreement, tentative agreement that we're bringing to you this evening. And so most notably, we've been able to increase our salaries, of course, year over year through our collective bargaining agreements. Our starting salary with this tentative agreement will be $50,950 this school year, and then move to $51,800 for the upcoming 26-27 school year. We have been able to increase the top of our salary table without our referendum, and then also increase our average full-time teacher salary without our referendum as well. But of note, approximately 75% of our certified staff earn those retention referendum increases, which we are very grateful to the community for. You see the CEA affirmative votes on that last bullet point there, and their latest vote passed with 89.7% of that tentative agreement that we're presenting to you this evening. So getting into our 2025-2027 agreement, we'll go through each of those years. For the 2025-2026 school year, which is this current school year, the tentative agreement states that we will add $850 to each line or row on that salary table. So each one of those salary rows will increase by $850, except that top row or that beginning teacher salary row. We did want to create some distinction between those with prior years of teaching experience and those with no years of teaching experience. And so when we meet as a collective bargaining team, we talk about those priorities of wanting the increases for all and movement along the salary schedule. And we also talk about where we may have some compression in the salary schedule and if there's an opportunity to address that compression. So this distinction really addresses some of that compression at our starting salary line right now. Our maximum with our referendum remains at $96,350, and our top of scale remains at $89,950. With those maximum salaries remaining where they are, we do have teachers who are at a maximum combined salary receiving a $500 stipend. And then, as stated, with this 25-26 school year, each teacher stays on their current step, except for that distinction at the beginning salary, and our steps are not based on experience, and then all of this would be retroactive to the start of the contract year. One new component to our collective bargaining agreement that you will see is the literacy endorsement increase. So that was handed to us from legislation to place that into our compensation model, and our literacy endorsement will provide an additional $150 for teachers on the year they receive that literacy endorsement. Then for the 26-27 teacher salary increases, we were able to satisfy the priority of moving along the salary schedule. So we talked about the priorities of increasing the salaries. We did that in 25-26, and then movement along the salary schedule, which is really where 26-27 lies. So all of those teachers will take a step not to exceed the maximum salary. So we have some of our teachers at the bottom or the top of our scale, whichever way you want to look at it, at that $89,950, that will not take a step. There is no step to take there. And then our teachers at that $50,950 row will move a step to the new starting salary of $51,800, and then actualize the $1,500 through a combination of their base salary increase and a stipend. Again, we have those maximum with referendum remaining at $96,350, and thus if you are at that maximum combined salary, teachers will receive a $500 stipend, and then that $150 literacy endorsement increase is written in there again. And again, that's for teachers when they receive that in their first year of adding that to their license. This would be our new salary tables, and Mandy's gonna walk us through 3 examples of that at a deeper level than my high-level explanation. What you'll see here is just that distinction of that beginning teacher salary of the $59,50 to the $51,800, and Mandy will help explain that further.
Okay, so this is an example of a teacher who was hired with no prior years of experience starting this school year. So they would start at that $59,50 for the 25-26 school year, and next year then take a step to what our new starting salary will be, that $51,800. So they would get that $850 base salary increase, but then would also receive a $650 stipend to actualize that $1,500 total. Teacher B, you can see where Teacher B is in terms of starting salary for 24-25, and then again receives the base salary increase of $850, and then is able to take a step in year 2. This teacher also has a literacy endorsement, so that also provides an additional $150. One thing I would just like to remind, I know Dr. Stahlbaum mentioned it, but again, the salary schedule is not based on years of experience. Prior to 2011, that is how teachers moved along the salary schedule. It was based on years of experience and further educational attainment. So there was often a master's column or a bachelor's plus 15, and so you could very clearly see how you would move along that salary schedule. In 2011, our state legislature changed how you could use those components to essentially allocate teacher funding. So they severely reduced the amount that could be tied to years of education or years of experience and further educational attainment. And so now with every bargaining contract, which we can do a 1 or a 2-year contract, we have to look at possible base salary increases or movement on the scale, and it's not something that automatically occurs anymore. So even though this teacher, you can see which step they're on, that likely does not equate to their years of experience. They might have 18, 19 years of experience within BCSC. Then teacher C has a salary of $82,450, and so again, you can see that base salary increase for this year, and then the step in next year of $1,500. However, this teacher is at the maximum combined salary of the $96,350, so that does mean they will receive that $500 stipend then in both years. Referendum remains the same, so our 5, 10, 15 years of experience within BCSC will still see those incremental increases and bumps in their salary. Our experience point system also remains unchanged for those coming to us with prior years of experience. And then the maximum pay, that base and referendum stipend, remains the same for both years of this tentative agreement. Speaking of the referendum, so I just have to further elaborate on this because honestly, it's hard to put into words the gratitude that teachers feel for the continued support both from our school board and our community for BCSC's operating referendum. State funding, as you can see, no longer stretches far enough to cover a competitive wage for our teachers. In fact, according to an article that was released just last week in the Indiana Capital Chronicle, new data shows that while Indiana teacher pay has climbed somewhat in recent years, Hoosier educators still earn less than their peers in all of our neighboring states, with Indiana currently ranking 39th in the nation for average teacher salary. These operating referenda are thankfully an option that the legislature has given to communities like ours to improve upon this lack of state funding. And as shown during a presentation from Dr. Stahlbaum back in July, BCSC has improved its retention, both of our BCSC teachers and also our ability to attract educators who come to us with previous years of experience due to our operating referendum. Of course, keeping these talented and committed educators in BCSC most importantly benefits the children we serve each and every day.
Thank you. So our tentative agreement overview, again, we have a 2-year agreement with a starting salary of $59.50 this school year and $51.8 next school year. We have those 2 priorities of increasing our base salaries, which we were able to do in 25-26 by $850, and then moving along the salary schedule, we're able to do in 26-27 with that cap of $96,350 with referendum. We have approximately 1.5% and 2.5% average base salary increases with an unchanged referendum pay structure, and all of this will be retroactive to the beginning of the 25-26 contract year. And before we take questions, I just want to sincerely thank the CEA bargaining unit members and CEA as a whole for your collaboration through this process. So we are happy to take questions.
Open to any questions from the board?
I have a couple. You mentioned compression. Do we have compression risk or issues as we speak today, or is it more forecasting out?
So every time we come to the bargaining table and we talk about our priorities, we look at where everyone lies on the salary schedule. And I think every salary schedule has compression. We talk about how can we problem solve some of these, and we're not able to do all of the things in every year, but we're able to do some of the things. So that was one of the points we talked about this year, and having that differentiator and distinction between teachers with no prior years of experience and teachers with prior years of experience who are currently at that 5950 row.
Can you, just to clarify or tee off of Logan's question, can you describe compression maybe just for everyone to make sure we're all understanding it the same way and know what you're talking about?
We have teachers who are in each line of this salary schedule, and we look at what years of experience do they have. And so we had about 21 teachers with no prior years of experience and at that 5950, with other teachers who had upwards of 5 years of experience with that 5950. So it was an effort to break that up and create that differentiation. So that's what I mean when I talk about compression at that row.
Thank you.
The other call that I had was, I know we have a lot of, I mean, based on our CEICC meetings, we have a lot of attrition in the 0 to 5 year category. And I know that, I want to say it was the bargaining before last, there was a lot of new teachers that mentioned, hey, barely able to afford rent, barely able to afford with this starting salary. Has there been any consideration to expand the operation referendum into that space? I know it's been reserved traditionally for 5, 10, 15 year, but that 0 to 5 is where we see our highest level attrition. So was there any discussion around that?
We didn't discuss that at the bargaining table because that's not a bargainable topic because it's referendum funds.
Okay.
Any other questions from the team?
Yeah, I think the one thing I've heard over the last 2.5 years more than anything is teachers deserve more. I'm surprised to see 1.5% after the last 2 years being around 12% total. This doesn't equal the average of around 3 to 4% over the last 10 years. I don't have, I wasn't in the meetings, so I don't know what happened in the meetings, but is there anything you can advise us on that, other than we don't have enough money? There's always money, right? How we spend it can be moved around a little bit, but how do we get to a point where it's only 1.5%?
I appreciate the question. I'll go back to that current and future financial headwinds and kind of reiterate some of those points that Mandy was making. And when we come to the bargaining table, we look at our budget for this bargaining session, and Dr. Bozeman presents that. We have a Q&A session before we kind of have some questions posed, we answer them, and we dive deep into what are the dollars we can bargain with at this moment in time. And so based on some of those projections with these current and future financial headwinds, we bargained with the dollars we felt comfortable bargaining with at this moment in time. I don't think that answers your question. I might refer to Dr. Bozeman for maybe something a little deeper than what I provided.
Actually, I'll jump in, Dr. Stahlbaum, on that one. Just with an education fund budget that's 96% salaries and benefits, we know that any change to moving money around is going to involve people in programs. And with a legislative session that didn't wrap up until May, and then an education, ADM count that we didn't start to realize how low that was going to be until students started showing up in August. The impact on our students and staff of a change at that time frame to people in programs, while we did staff as tightly as we could and we work with our CEA partners in all staffing meetings, we just weren't willing to look at removing people in programs to the extent that it would have made a meaningful impact on this bargaining session for this year. But like we talked about last time, we're working both internally and with CEA and others within the district to identify potential savings for future years, so that if we're in this same situation or a similar situation next year or the year after, we're prepared to make changes with enough time to make sure that the students and staff members that are impacted by those changes have some time to prepare for it.
So the big story is we couldn't afford more than 1.5% for teachers. There's just no more money, right?
The budget that is proposed tonight spends more money than we're bringing in revenue. So we could afford more, but we would spend it out of a cash balance and continue to put ourselves in a deficit financing position. And that commits us, of course, when a teacher's salary, an individual teacher or 765 teachers' salary goes to the base, that's a commitment for every year thereafter.
Mr. Nell?
Just maybe too early to know the answer to this, but next year's starting salary of $51,800, do we know enough about surrounding school corporations to know if that will still make us as competitive as we've been?
Yes, we will still be the highest salary in our area.
One follow-up on the step schedule, which it's hard for me because it's not years of experience, but like how does it allow you to be competitive in being able to bring in experienced individuals from adjacent school corporations? I've got a couple of teachers that I know recently that have came from whether it's private school or public schools. I mean, are you able to place them within the scale, or how does that work?
Yes, that is exactly how that works. So someone comes to us with experience, and then I provision where our current teachers are with that experience. They fall somewhere on this salary schedule, and then we're able to place them on that salary schedule in comparison with our current teachers. Our referendum is also really supportive of teachers with prior years of experience, and so that has been something that has allowed us to recruit and retain staff.
And then the 1.5%, the 850 is what we're giving this year, but for 2026, 2027, it looks like the steps are the same. So is it really just, it's the step increase, that's the 2.5%?
Everybody, yes, because everybody moves.
Okay.
This is a follow-up on Mr. Nowlin's question. All through the conversations, it was difficult to know where we were compared to other school corporations and other teacher unions. But I'm assuming that there are votes somewhere in Indiana almost every night now approving a new collective bargaining agreement. Where will this put us in terms of our comparing us to our peers?
To our peers and our surrounding communities, we are the highest starting salary. To the rest of the state, we won't know until all of those are finalized.
And the increase, is the increase proportional to other corporations and what they're able to do?
I can't answer that with any confidence right now. What I can state is there are several school corporations who are having stipends instead of base salary increases. That's a trend across the state. And so I think we will see quite a bit of that.
Going back a couple meetings though, just for Rich, like 60,000 I think was the average in the state, and we're at 69,000. So we are right now like 15% better than the average school corporation in the state. And then based on all the discussion, everybody is going to have the same challenge with incoming money. They're not going to be able to just go out and get more. So as long as we're all in a reasonable percentage, we're probably going to still be 10 to 15% better than the average school corporation in the state.
And much of that is due to our referendum. Other questions? Thank you so much.
Well done, thank you. Okay, Dr. Bozeman, Health and Dental.
Good evening. Our Health Trust has, as Mr. Major mentioned, recently met and discussed and have brought a recommendation to you for consideration to set health and dental premiums for the 2026 calendar year. Members of the health trust. Just as a reminder, we are self-funded in our health trust, so just among BCSC employees that participate. John Green is also our coordinator of campus security. Is the chair, Amy London representing CEA, Jason, of course, representing the board, Jesse is a teacher, and TJ representing the classified staff, and other participants in the non-voting members, but other participants are listed there as well. Ultimately, I'm pleased to share with you that, at least for the first time within my memory, since I've been at BCSC, we're recommending a 0% increase in health and dental premiums for the 2026 health plan year. You may recall last year we brought a small increase to you for consideration. The trust members thought that would be wise. We thought, Mrs. Linden and I and others had thought that this, from a bargaining standpoint, would be a lean year. So we had that small increase last year to safeguard us a little bit into this year, which has paid off, and we're able to recommend a 0% increase for the 2026 calendar year. This is a snapshot of our cash reserves available. I'm happy to explain this as you're interested. But those are by year and then as of September 30th reserve amounts there. You see that highlighted reserve amount is higher than previously. We do have some expenditures coming up that we have not paid yet this year, so that'll dip a little bit. And also, as a reminder, we do have a provision, if you're curious, in the CBA that will remain in the CBA, that if the reserve level gets to 30% of expected expenditures of the next year, then the trust would have a discussion, bring action, a recommendation for the board for action for the balance of some of those reserve monies to go back to members through an HSA deposit. So as of now, we're not quite to that 30%, but we are getting close. Same information on dental. I'll go back just a moment here. I'll look at Mr. Stinner because he smiles, I think, or cries maybe, I don't know. But the 2019, 2020 years of things were not great on this chart, and we are not there now. So special thanks to folks before me, certainly, and our advisors with the Health Trust. We have a really good thing going now for members, and we're in a good financial position. I don't know, again, as Dr. Stahlbaum mentioned, with what other bargaining situations other districts are in. I don't know where they are with their premium increases, but I would bet you $1 there are very few that are going to recommend a 0% increase going into next year. Same information on dental, same, quite frankly, grim outlook 8 or 9 years ago, in a much better position now as well. Certainly happy to answer any questions you have. Mr. Major can jump in as well. He's in all those health trust meetings and can speak to them just as well as I can.
This action item tonight, what, are we approving the greens and the blues on the first slide? So if we vote?
Yes, you're ultimately just approving a 0% increase. We do those annually within the board. These are premium amounts that are already set for this calendar year of 25, which you carry into next year.
Thank you.
On the first slide, when it says year-to-date other revenue, can you elaborate what is other revenue?
This slide?
Yeah.
Those are, this is Mr. Brenner's presentation. These are rebates that we get. So expenses are obviously expenses that go out. Revenue are premiums from members, and then other revenue would be rebates that we get, mostly on pharmaceutical items. So
There's some interest income in that one as well.
yes, yes, thank you, and interest. These funds are invested also.
The law around self-funded health programs says that any money that goes into this can only be expended on the members who are paying into it. And so even this money, the cash balance that's invested, that is deposited back in here to make sure that the profits from those investments go only to the folks who pay into the trust.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Besman. Okay, first reading of our final policy package. Do you promise, Dr. Phillips?
This is the final
Final.
package of policies related to the reorganization efforts with Church, Hiddle, and Antrim to move away from our Neola policy packages.
Sounded like a disclaimer, but continue.
That was a caveat, just a little caveat.
That's right. It does not mean it's the last time we will talk about policies, for sure. So as you remember, we had a board work session back on October the 6th to review this final group of 28, I believe it is, policies that, again, this is an effort to go from the organization under the policies under Neola to more clean and transparent for the public and for parents and members of the community to read. And so I'm not going to read each of these 28 to you. If you have any questions about them, certainly let's talk about them. But we also did so back in October. So anyone who wants to dig in deep to those can certainly view that video from October on YouTube as well. So the only ones that are new there are two policies that we discussed during that work session that are new policies that Church Hiddle recommends that are not based on a current Neola policy, and that's prohibition of unmanned aircraft. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, you couldn't fly a drone anywhere over our buildings or where our students and members of the public were. The law around that has loosened, but you still cannot do so without our permission. So if you're at a football game or at a band performance, you must have the permission of the folks running that event for BCSC to fly a drone over our facilities or our students. And then G500 is intellectual property ownership and revenue, and this was one just clarifying that if a teacher or an employee creates something that is intellectual property in the course of their employment with BCSC, how revenue for that, who owns the property, and how revenue that is split between the district and the employee. This tonight represents the first reading of these packages, or this last final package, and then the second reading will be at our next meeting on November the 17th. These policies are all posted on the website for the public to review. Please reach out to us if you have any questions well before that meeting on the 17th so we can make sure and address them. Otherwise, we'll bring this package to you on the 17th for approval.
I will point out, we've already had our work session on this package of policies. We did it before the first reading. I actually think that went pretty well. So last time we got it right and we figured out how to work through these maybe, but we'll use that model going forward. I also want to remind people that all work sessions, except for executive sessions, are on YouTube and available. So if a person is interested in what we discussed or whatever, that is on our YouTube channel on October 6th, and you can review that and understand the discussions that we had. Okay, any comments or questions from the team before we move on? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, and last up, Dr. Bozeman again for Mission 2030.
Emily Newton from CSO's project manager, and as she starts to make her way up here, she's with Dr. Stephanie Lone from CSO also. There's a few folks here. I'm going to put them on the spot and have them stand up, but we have some principals, directors, some design team members of the three projects. If you could please stand up briefly. So if these are folks that are putting in a tremendous amount of time for these projects at the respective buildings. So if you have questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer when the time is appropriate. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your time that you put into this.
I feel like we should clap for them. Thank you all. A lot of money in good hands.
The presentation that Emily will share with you tonight highlights three projects: the planned renovations at Taylorsville Elementary, Mount Healthy Elementary, and the addition to satisfy C4 program needs at Columbus East High School. The approval items for you tonight are only permission to bid Mount Healthy and East. We'll seek permission to bid Taylorsville at the next board meeting. And also, you may notice in your packets, there's a longer presentation in there. For the interest of time, we pulled a few slides out of here, so you have a longer presentation, full presentation in your packet. So thanks to CSO for all their work, and I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thank you, Dr. Bozeman, and to the board for having us here today. I'm excited to share project updates for the 3 projects that Dr. Bozeman mentioned. I do want to say a large thank you on behalf of the entire design team who's had the opportunity to work with you all as you continue to invest in your people and in your buildings. I stand here as one person representing over 50 design professionals who are working every day on these 3 projects. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to do so. First, we'll talk about Taylorsville. Again, I'll try to keep this as brief as I possibly can, but there have been several discussions starting at the end of the last school year. Dr. Detmer and her team have been very gracious to us with their time, giving us time after school, giving us time over the summer to talk through all of these points of discussion here that focus on safety and security in the building, aligning with current learning and teaching trends, improvement of classroom technology and furniture, and overall just creating collaborative learning spaces for students that align with what you've seen on other projects that we've done at this point in the district. Those staff input sessions usually last about an hour. We've reviewed multiple floor plan options over those many design team meetings. And what we've learned from Taylorsville specifically is that the students and the teachers make this building special, not so much the architecture. That can't be said necessarily of all of your buildings. I guess that's not true. It's always your teacher and your students, but sometimes the building is a little extra special too. What we've learned from Taylorsville is it's really about the people in that building that make it run as well as it does. There was a desire for STEM to be grouped with other related arts in the building. Again, trying to make better office flow. Safety and security is a central point of discussion for us on all of these projects when we work with the teacher design teams. And then they really just need some ample room for small group spaces in this building, a little bit limited right now by their current footprint. So we looked at many design options, and without getting too much into each of these, we've landed on an option or a concept 3, which is basically a refinement of the other 2 option that creates clusters of classrooms kind of around supporting spaces. So a commons in the middle of each cluster of 3 to 4 classrooms. Each classroom will have its own cubby, access to small group rooms, access to a single user restroom, and access to a sensory space nearby. This is the current and existing floor plan. Again, for those who may be a little bit less familiar with the building, there's a central core on the east side of the building with the media center and STEM, and then there's kind of corridor to the north, south, and to the east. And you can see just by the amount of white space in this building that there's a lot of area that's just taken up by circulation. Typically, we would anticipate that circulation is about 30% of the building. It's closer to about 37% of the space that you would, or I'm sorry, 15% and then 21% in this building. So we're trying to get that number down, essentially to make that space more usable to pick up the small group needs that the building has. The other thing I'll point out in the existing floor plan here is the main office. The secure vestibule that exists now breaks up the hallway in the north-south direction, so you have to bypass that secure vestibule or pass through it in order to get to the south end of the building to access music, art, gym, and then the 6th grade classrooms. The new plan, per the request of the teachers, moves STEM down with music and art, groups all the classrooms on the north and east side of the building, and then most importantly, probably most notably, moves that main office over to the west side of the building, giving better sight lines to see those who are entering, coming up to the main entrance of the building. It also then opens up that corridor that runs north-south, and so you no longer have that break in circulation throughout the space. I do want to highlight a couple of things here. We're going with a largely open building, but you'll see all of these doors, these cross-corridor doors. In the event of an emergency, or quite frankly, just after school when you don't want people wandering through your building, this building can be compartmentalized by closing these series of cross-corridor doors, and it creates all these different zones that you cannot get into unless you were there when that button is pushed. You can certainly always get out of these zones, so free egress, but the goal is to kind of lock these different spaces down as needed in the event of an emergency, or again, for building compartmentalization after hours. Something else we talked about a lot with the team is circulation in this building. You'll see that we have gone from 2 corridors down to 1 central corridor in the space. and that each classroom has been given a secondary path of egress out of it. So in addition to the coat rooms, for a shelter-in-place event, there is a new door that's being proposed out of each of the classrooms in this building as a secondary path of egress. And those are a zoomed-in view of those cubby rooms and then those exterior doors, just for your reference. And then this is a concept view of the 3rd and 4th grade learning commons in the building. Again, we're early in design on this one. At some point, we'll share new renderings with colors and patterns and textures. But this just is meant to show the amount of small group work that can happen in this space for enrichment, for remediation, for large group gathering. And really, the thought here is that 7 classrooms surround this space and use the resources as needed by the classroom teacher. Schedule-wise, this is supposed to wrap up here with design near the end of the year, and then we will go out to bid at the beginning of the year in January, February. We are working with our construction manager partner, Myron Ajum, on this job. We will continue to have safety security meetings with John Green and with the staff to talk through the design of the building, along with each of the individual classroom teachers and special education, title, ELL. Essentially, everyone who has a stake in this building will have their opportunity to come and give us feedback on the final design. The budget for this project is $15 million. At Mount Healthy, we have very similar themes here, so I'm going to kind of skip through a little bit at the beginning, but the biggest one here that I want to highlight is the need to improve acoustics in the learning environment for this space. Having been in this space after hours without it fully in session, it's loud in this building, and that certainly not only affects the acoustic, but also the safety, security, and the fact that you can't compartmentalize the building at all currently outside of kind of the classroom wings. So safety, security, and acoustics were the 2 things that we heard from teachers the most in this project, and we've sought to address those with our design. I will circle back here. The architecture on this one is unique, and there is something special about it, but again, it's very challenging to work within, and we've decided that the needs of the students and the teachers supersede the need to carefully protect every single piece of the architectural identity of the building. We're going to try to keep it looking and feeling like Mount Healthy, but bring it into a 21st learning environment. Again, we've worked through concepts 1, 2, and landed on concept 3 here, which is a kind of finessed version of concepts 1 and 2. It makes the media center kind of longer and more continuous through the building. It improves sight lines and supervisions down the main spline, creates larger learning commons for students, and allows, again, for cubbies and individual restrooms in each classroom. This is a very hard plan to read if you've not been or walked through Mount Healthy, but this represents the upper levels, the lower levels of Mount Healthy. This is the existing floor plan here, so you can see kind of a cluster of floor plan of classrooms on the upper diagram is both levels 1 and 0, and then the upper one is levels 2 and 3. So there are 4 different floor heights in this building, and getting those to show correctly and model them correctly and share with the team in 3D correctly has been a fun challenge for us. This is our current design, and again, a little bit hard to understand without having a full grasp of all the different levels, but essentially we've tried to create a 2-section building. So every 2 classrooms are sharing an activity commons with a little bit of flex space in the middle of the building. We've created dedicated pre-K classrooms, moved music around a little bit, and really just kind of cleaned up and improved the flow through the spine by widening the corridor in this space. Similar to Taylorsville, we do have the compartmentalization. So all the spots where you see the red squares there are where we've got cross-corridor doors on this building, and that creates these compartments when those cross-corridor doors are closed. So essentially all the classroom space there on the south side of the building, if you push that button for a lockdown situation or again for after-school hours, that space is completely closed off. Similarly here, again, always trying to find a second path of egress for students out of a space. And so there are situations when you're on an upper floor where you can pass through another classroom to get to a secondary stair, or at the lower levels where you can directly egress out into the playground area. Again, for people who have been in this building, there is no accessibility no access to the upper levels or the lower level. So our proposed solution to that, in lieu of putting in 3 full-size elevators, is to actually do 6 vertical platform lifts. These are pieces of equipment that essentially sit on the floor, have their own internal ramps, their own power systems, and allow for that 5-foot change in elevation and a significantly reduced cost to you guys, both in terms of installation and maintenance over time. Every classroom in this building will be accessible at the completion of the project, except for 1 third-grade classroom, which you could get to by going through another classroom, but there's just one that was kind of left out in the dark. But all but 1 classroom will be completely accessible, meeting ADA standards at the end of this project. Again, I talked a little bit about the areas of refuge and then the path of egress. So you can see here the coat cubbies that are shared between the 2 classrooms, with access to the toilet rooms, which are in kind of the light brown color, and then again, those secondary sets of stairs in terms of shelter in place or a path of egress to get out of the building from the 2nd floor. Again, understanding this building 3-dimensionally is challenging. I think in the packet that you have, you'll see this as maybe 4 or 5 different views from foundations all the way up to this view, which is all the levels turned on at the same time. Again, we really want to thank Mrs. Drum and the team at Mount Healthy for their patience as we try to explain our thought process here, as we try to work through design and talk about these kind of complex spaces in 3 dimensions. So just a quick view, here are the upper level classrooms as they exist now with cubbies. This is our proposed learning commons, so you can see full walls for classrooms. Learning commons, we are not showing ceilings in, but classrooms will have them to address that acoustic issue. This is inside that classroom that we were just looking toward. And you can see now with a full acoustic ceiling, access to the commons on the left, view down to your other classrooms on the immediate left, so trying to keep some of that Mount Healthy connectedness that they have now. And then the cubby access there on the right side of the image. This is the main hallway looking west currently. And this is that same hallway where we've essentially deleted part of the program that's there to open it up for the media center. So trying to keep some of the structure exposed, keeping, again, some of the pieces that make Mount Healthy, without maybe all of the noise of the colors and the jagged kind of walls that butt into the space. And there's that same view kind of looking the other direction, looking east down the corridor. And then again, simplifying this, trying to lessen the amount of noise so that student artwork can shine, so that your student and your books and everything that BCSE has told us is important is able to stand out in this space. Again, we are wrapping up design on this one near the end of the year. This should bid in January, which means construction can start as early as spring break. We would anticipate about 18 months of construction, and our goal here would be that students are moved into a completed building by the start of the 2028 spring semester. Budget on this one is $22.5 million. You can imagine as we put up walls everywhere, that means having to redo all of the HVAC, all of the lighting, all of the controls in the building, new plumbing, essentially rebuilding a new building inside of an existing shell to make it both accessible and safe and functional for students. And then I will real quickly here, I know I'm over my time, I apologize, try to get through C4. Again, thank you very much to Dr. Hack and the entire team who's met with us now several times to talk about their existing spaces and their dream of a new space. What we are proposing is a 22,500 square foot addition to the west side of Columbus East. North is to the right in this image for reference. Our plan is for it to sit between the tennis court and the current construction lab. And what the space will hold is some really large spaces for lab work, so some big box spaces for things like construction and welding, and then a cosmetology lab that will hold spots for up to 40 students to be working simultaneously. That's all on the first floor with corresponding classrooms and support spaces. You can see the new courtyard that's created there on the east side of the site by enclosing and attaching to the existing building. And then the second floor has an ag lab and an ag classroom, as well as serving kind of our mechanical space that's kind of running the whole HVAC piece of the building. Again, about 18,000 square feet on the ground floor and about 4,500 upstairs. This is a concept image as you come down. Again, tennis courts would be on your right. The existing construction lab is there on your left. The overhead doors, the first one would be construction lab. The one on the right would be welding. And then further down with a little coping is the cosmetology area. And then this is looking back the other way. So again, 1-story cosmetology piece on the end, 2-story lab spaces for ag, for construction and for welding. And then ag sits kind of hidden back upstairs behind the welding lab. This is an interior view of the cosmetology lab. Again, set up so up to 40 students can be working in this space at one time. Positioned for them to each have a guest as well. There are restroom, public facilities for them. It's fit out with all the things that you would expect. So hair washing station, hair drying, manicure, facial, everything that they need to keep their licensure as a cosmetology lab. And then upstairs again, in terms of the ag lab, kind of an open space with very cleanable floors. That was the #1 request. Cleanable floors and power were some of the big requests here, but just really a large lab space to allow for aquaponics and a number of other activities that were shared with us, which are quite frankly very exciting. I think it's great that you guys have a program here that has these types of curriculum items. It's not something that we see everywhere, so I love that the community supports it, and we appreciate the opportunity to get to work on spaces like this that are kind of unique to us. This one we are almost done with, so this project is wrapping up. We will be finishing design and documentation this week. The project will then bid before the end of the year, and we would expect construction to start then first thing in 2026. It has a budget of $12 million, and again, we would like to, or anticipate that this would be open for the start of the 2027 school year. Again, on behalf of all the people that I've listed on this board, thank you very much to the teacher design team for their time and input, and thank you all for letting us be part of the process. Any questions?
Can I just say that was very impressive, the amount of information and the knowledge that you have on these projects. That was really well done in the presentation. Thank you.
I've got a couple questions. The new egress doors that are going to be implemented at both elementary schools that are going out of the classrooms, how are those going to be contained as we have a high number of potential elopers? So especially some of them are in cubby rooms, and so maintaining eyes on is not always the easiest thing.
Sure.
So how do we?
So the ones at Mount Healthy are actually existing. We're not putting any new doors in that building at all. The ones at Taylorsville are solid doors, and they don't have any type of delay, but they do have a door position switch on them. So there's a sensor, so if that door is propped open, if it gets opened, there is an alarm essentially that goes off that lets you know that. When we asked teachers about that, they said, that the preference is that they have the opportunity to take students outside directly. There are days where you don't want to just walk through the corridor. Your kids have some energy that they need to shake out. So there's certainly, you have to weigh the options when it comes to doors and door position switches. So we've tried to find that balance. Could someone elope from it? Yes. But the same way that they could from any door in the building that you have right now. So we've tried to create sight lines into those cubby spaces so that you don't have kids in there who are doing things unsupervised. But again, trying to balance all of those different pieces.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like a badge in, badge out type scenario, or
it'll be exit
that's
only.
A possibility, but.
Yeah, exit only.
Okay. And then the vertical lifts that are going to be implemented at Mount Healthy.
Yes.
In case of emergency.
Those are on our battery power.
Say again?
They're on battery power.
More likely, how fast do they operate, or will they continue to operate in like case of a fire
Yes.
or anything like that? Okay.
Yeah.
Good questions. What other questions?
The Mount Healthy, just So as an engineer, I understand what it's like to draw in 2D. That's not hard. 3D is very complex. You have to have a special mind to see it. I know when Logan and I visited 2 years ago to Mount Healthy, we were just in awe of just the general feel for how noisy and difficult it's got to be for a teacher to manage a classroom. So God bless them for being able to do it, right? Yeah, it's not easy. So when we left, we were like, "Man, we need to put some walls up. We need to do a couple things here and there, right?" And you know, we kind of both agreed. You know, Logan mentioned it might be 15 to 20 million. My question is less towards you and over here. So in November of 23, we had a presentation that said 4.2 million. In March of 24, that moved to 8 million. In April of this year, it moved to 15.7 million. I think somewhere in the summer, I think I missed something here, but I think it moved to 18 million. This said 22 and a half, but our document that I think we have says 18 to 21. Two questions. What is the number versus what is approved based on the bonds that were issued in the agreement then for schools?
So, yes, and good questions. I'll back up a little bit, and I jotted a note as we were listening to this presentation, and you're right, Mr. Major, I have heard over and over from this board to do Mount Healthy right. So that's the charge that we've heard and that we've given to our consultants here, obviously. So to answer your question on the cost, we are also, we have a budget meeting again next week. So we are value engineering these things consistently as we go through. So there is not, you didn't ask this, but I'll say it a different way. This is not an open checkbook, whatever it, you know, that type of situation. I am concerned about the cost of this project. I'm encouraged by the good bid results we've had in other projects that are going to help. So for example, the most recent would be the Maple Grove project that's $3 million under. We'll need to make some adjustments because the 306 for the Envision projects is not going beyond 306 because of this or because of anything else.
And that was a concern, was
Yes.
where the shift would come from. I know we've had little bits and pieces,
Yep.
but this is like 5 times what we originally.
Yep.
And it just, I didn't know where that money was going to come from. I knew we had what I thought was just crazy amounts for the gyms at 25 million apiece.
Yep.
I don't think that that's a real number. I think we can do that for less. So my assumption was it was coming from something like that, to your point, value engineer can come down.
Yep.
And so I don't at all disagree that the work you presented needs to be done. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think Logan and I would, if you would have said this is what we needed to do 2 years ago, we'd have bobbleheaded yes, and that's absolutely what you need to do. It just, when you see the numbers, I didn't know how we were, from an approval perspective, I didn't know how we were changing this number up to then bring something else down.
Yep.
And so that was my concern.
Yeah, it's a fair concern, a fair question. So we'll adjust as we go. Right now, within my own calculations, I have it factored at about 19. We'll see how well we can scale this back a little bit. What I didn't want to do was to bring this presentation and say, whatever, 18, and then bring a GMP to you that's 22, and then have some additional questions. So we're going to try to scale that back a little bit without cutting corners, obviously. But your assumption, at least my opinion, is correct in those phase 3 projects that would include the extracurricular spaces at the high schools would be adjusted to accommodate our priorities or with the spaces that we're doing in phase 1 and phase 2. So yes, that's a fair assumption. We'll get to that point when we get to that point, but it's a fair statement and a fair assumption.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Major beat me to it, because looking back when I sold 22 million, 22.5, and it's like, I don't remember having that approval, and even went back and read the CMC contract that we approved in June of 18 million. So I assume there may be future approvals coming our way. So.
It will be, yeah. Once we get it scaled in and we go to bid, and we'll bring, that's just we have with the others, we'll bring in GMP to you for approval, so yeah. It's a good, I don't know how this works, but if you ever buy stock in drywall, if that's a thing, I'd recommend, insider trading tip. I'd recommend doing that because we're throwing a lot of walls up in Mount Healthy here soon.
I have a couple calls. One, guilty for driving the Mount Healthy, like 100% sold. Like this school is well-deserved of walls and acoustics, and thank you, Ms. Bodart, and your staff for teaching in that. Like we need to have all the support, and I also am happy to see Taylorsville. I think it's been since the expansion in the late 90s is really where it's sat since then. I had a couple questions. It looks like, especially in Mount Healthy, is capacity for the classrooms going down a lot? Like it looks like it's going down 25. Like I'm seeing groups of 3 and 4 classrooms go down to groups of 2 and 3 classrooms. So are we losing a lot of capacity here? And is it really more in preparation of the West Side School or Maple Grove? I apologize.
No, we're not anticipating, we've not designed for less capacity at either school. They're the same, we've allocated space differently from how it is now. I can probably pull that up.
Oh, so there's the same number of classrooms, they're just moved?
Yes, or some classrooms now are being used for small group, or they're not being used at all. And when we use classrooms at Mount Healthy, we have to use that very loosely. They're open,
Okay.
open spaces.
Yeah, there was a couple of those, I remember that.
Sure,
where there's-
and all of these are called off as what could be classrooms. They have technology for classrooms, but they're not all occupied as classrooms.
And that's the same for Taylorsville as well?
Yes.
And then the other question I had is on the security measures for the lockout of Mount Healthy, and then we can go to Taylorsville, is it didn't look like when I was thinking of like where are we gonna put security doors and zones, it's those big open areas like the cafeteria and the gymnasium. Is there any discussion around trying to be able to secure those zones as well?
Those zones can be secured. Again, we have to try to find things that we're not touching as part of these projects.
I know.
We've certainly, at the gymnasium where we're putting in new doors, have tied those to the lockdown system. The existing cafeteria doors are ones that we were trying or planning to keep, but that doesn't mean that you can't change the hardware or the function of those doors to be kind of on a lockdown piece.
Because if I recall, and it's been, I think about a year and a half, 2 years since I've been in this building, but where that blue area was the entrance, right?
Yes.
And then, so like, I guess, is there anything like, kind of like a secure door after that to keep them from going down the hallway and accessing all the open areas like the cafeteria, the STEM lab, eventually the gymnasium? I guess that was my question there.
Sure. We're not proposing one now. There's the secure vestibule and the check-in process at the secure vestibule, but nothing beyond that. It's open corridor like it is at all the other buildings.
Okay. And then on Taylorsville's design, the same, actually I believe it was Miss Mead's in the room, her old hallway there on the left, the bottom left. Is there a secure corridor off of the cafeteria for those classrooms down on the left across from the gymnasium, kind of like on your way to STEM?
On the way to STEM past the office, no. There's not.
Yeah, like the classrooms there on the bottom left. If those are still classrooms, I can't tell.
Those are offices. That's all administration and counseling, just above the STEM lab. Is that what you're referencing?
Oh, I just realized you did change that to the office. Nope, you're good. Okay.
Again, we've tried anywhere where there are classrooms to make sure that those are in fully compartmentalized parts of the building.
I have maybe a broad question for the working teams in the audience here. I understand we went through a design process, collected input, you never get absolutely everything you want, but there's like the critical few things that you want to make sure you're getting out of every project. Is there anything that the teams involved in these spaces identified as critical that you all feel like we are not accommodating in the designs that we're looking at tonight? Oh my gosh, Gene Hack shook his head no. Gene Hack is happy with what we're getting. Good.
I think the East design's phenomenal, especially Go Ag.
Good.
Adam, great look there. The only thing that's missing is a cattle chute, the same. So.
Yeah.
It's hard to get cows up to the second, third floor.
But for Taylorsville and Mount Healthy, are we checking the big boxes that people expected to see checked? I'm seeing lots of nods. Good.
I cannot overstate how grateful we are to the teachers who continue to give their time outside of contract hours, give us their lunches, give us their summer days, to come and give us input on this. We, of course, have plenty of projects that we've done all over the state, but none quite so unique as what we work on here in Columbus and your very special buildings. And so understanding the people who live and work in those buildings every day and what their needs are feed and inform our design more than anything else ever could. And so I'm very grateful to these teams for showing up tonight and for continually showing up and giving us input and saying the things that are important to them and things that they don't like, which is equally as important. So thank you very much.
Okay.
One last comment from me, I should have put it in the presentation, but there is about just a little bit short of $1.2 million of Ready 2.0 money we're anticipating for the Columbus East project as well, so.
Awesome. Very good.
I think it was fantastic, so good job.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just have to add there, if you don't mind, Emily maybe said something there at the end that was one of the more poignant statements about Columbus. It's that the people that make this place special, not our buildings. The buildings exist because the people here are special. So thanks for your work.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have our public comment section of the meeting. If you ever want to speak at a board meeting, you can come in before the board meeting and sign up on a blue sheet. It is at the front door, and then you will have 3 minutes to address the board. I have no one signed up to speak tonight. So we will skip that portion of the agenda and move on to request for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wielden. Under item 6A this evening, I have a request for approval of old business for both the minutes of the public hearing and the regular school board meeting from September 29th, as well as the board work session for the policy package on October 6th. Request approval of item 6A as presented.
I move that we approve item 6A as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nellen and Mr. Schultz. Are there any questions or comments on item 6A? No? Okay. All those in favor of approving item 6A, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We have items 7A through 7I under new business. Those include the regular approval items of supplemental contracts, field trips, and professional leaves, school fundraisers, as well as claims and payroll for the October 20th docket of just under $1 million. All of the September 2025 pre-runs of just under 7.3 million, and then the payroll that occurred between August 11th and September 7th of $3.98 million.
Thank you. I believe that we want to pull out items E and I to be voted on separately based on feedback I received. So just as people decide on the motions, I want to make sure that we're doing that appropriately.
So I move that we approve items 7A through D, G, and H.
And F.
And F.
And what would I leave out?
F.
Foxtrot, F.
Oh, and F, sorry. A through D and F through H.
Yes, thank you.
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glick. Any questions or comments on items A through D or F through H? Okay, all those in favor of approving items 7A through D and F through
Real
H,
quick,
please
hold
say
on.
aye.
Hold on, I'm just double checking something real quick.
Okay.
Does this include the buses? Which one's the buses?
Buses should be item E, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so on the buses, I did have one question on the buses. There was something that stood out. I mean, it's not
We've already
significant.
pulled that one out if you want to wait
Okay,
until
yeah, we're good.
vote, and then we can talk about that resolution.
Okay, yep, go ahead.
The buses, just so you know, the buses technically are part of both item E and item I, as they're part of the budget as well as would be paid for with proceeds from the GO bonds. For clarification. I'll reiterate. I'm requesting approval of items A through D, F, G, and H.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving items 7A through E and F, or A through D, now you're getting me all wound up. 7A through D and F through H, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. That was hard.
Then I move that we approve item 7E, the 2026 budget resolution.
Second.
Second. Any questions or comments on budget?
Yeah, I was going to ask for a refresher. This occurs to me, I think, every year, and I ask this question, but for clarification, when we're voting on the budget, there were several documents attached, but it's the one, the blue and white one, is the one that really matters. I think it was called Public Form 4 or something like that. Is that what we're actually voting on when we vote on the budget?
That's correct. The board approves, and we submit to the DLGF for their approval, the Form 4 that includes a maximum budget for the 5 tax-supported funds. That includes Education Fund, Operations Fund, Operating Referendum Fund, and the 2 debt funds. And so there's a maximum budget that the district cannot spend more in 2026 than that number that's approved unless we come back to the board for an additional appropriation, which requires a public hearing. It also includes a maximum property tax levy for each of those funds that the county then uses to collect the property taxes and distribute them to the district. And then based on those 2 items and the assessed value that the board doesn't have any control over, there is a maximum property tax rate that is attached. And those are essentially the 15 numbers that the board approves each year: maximum budget, maximum rate, and maximum levy for the 5 tax-supported funds.
I have an open question maybe for Mr. McIver. I had turned in, and it was approved, I think, last board meeting, a conflict of interest with regards to the purchase of buses. This budget includes, I think, a budget for buses, but is not awarding any specific awards to an OEM or a powertrain solution, et cetera. So I just want to ask if it's appropriate for me to vote on this budget tonight.
The plan that's attached to your agenda that I reviewed is as you described it, laying out number of buses intended to be purchased in each calendar year. I don't believe that would present a technical conflict because those buses could end up being manufactured by any given company with any given system in it.
Okay, thank you.
Staying with the buses, just a real quick, hopefully simple question. Items 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, all 4 have the same description, the same DOE information, but the first 2 have a price of $146 and the other 2 $126. I didn't know if they were all $146, if they're all $126, or if the descriptions actually don't include differences.
There are differences between the 2. I can't tell you off the top of my head what they all are, but there are spec differently between the 2.
Okay.
So.
Is it possible that the difference is a lift, Dr. Bozeman?
It's very possible. I didn't want to make that assumption, but that would make sense. But
Okay. So I believe we have a motion and a second.
Quick question. I have a question as well. I was waiting for the buses to close. On the 2026 budget, I know historically we've been very conservative as it comes to estimating interest revenue. Obviously, we don't want to count on something that we know may or may not come, and I think that's very wise. However, we've been very conservative. I mean, I think the closest we've came is 2 million favorable, and we've had close to 8 million favorable in just recent prior 3 years. Have we ever looked at earmarking these overruns as a contingency rather than putting them in interest-bearing accounts that just continue to build out that cash reserves? So
Can you clarify your question?
So like, for example, like, right, we've had multiple things come up. I believe one board member talked about the pre-K funding shortfall. I've talked about an inability to afford the food CEP expansion. We've had clear areas where we said we don't have the funds, but this budget represents, again, a likely interest overrun in terms of interest revenue. So have we ever looked at earmarking likely overruns versus just knowing that it's likely to go over and we're just going to put it into our cash reserves to collect more interest revenue?
We have not, no, we have not done that in the past. Essentially what it would be, what you're describing, the request would be to increase the maximum budget, assuming that we may collect more because the board approves that high number, the highest number we can spend from that fund. The request.
But we know it normally comes in, the revenues come in above that, but we can't spend more. At least the revenues historically have always come in above that.
The board can approve spending more both during this budget process or afterwards as part of an additional appropriation in either case. The board can authorize more to the extent that we have the cash to do so.
So to earmark, you'd actually have to raise the upper number essentially.
Either during this process or later on in an additional appropriation process. Even if the revenues come in higher than what we've estimated, the board still has to authorize that expenditure. We have to submit it to the DLGF, and they approve it as long as the cash is available. If the cash is not available, they will not approve it.
So every dollar in the budget has to have a purpose, and that purpose cannot be to sit there for reserves at some point. It's got to come from an expense, a real expense. So if you end up with a reserve at the end of the year, it's because you either got more revenue or you found savings, but not because you budgeted for a reserve.
Correct. You can budget to expend that reserve. The board can choose to budget to expend that reserve, but it has to be part of a budget adoption process. We have to select, to state it in another way, it has to be part of a budget, and it has to be, if you're doing an additional appropriation, you have to identify what the purpose of that is to the DLGF.
I think it would be wise, interest has been a hotly debated topic on this board, and I know it's been one I've discussed a lot in the community, is the collection of cash reserves. I think it's what led to a lot of this cash reserve policy. I think if we're going to build on the reserves, I think it would be wise for the board and the administration in March to look at it, where are we at 1 quarter through the year, and say, okay, we're going to overshoot this likely by $1.5 million, which is the lowest that we've ever done it in the past 5 years, but maybe that's where it's at. How would we prioritize this? Because we've clearly said we don't have money for the pre-K shortfall from the state. We've clearly said we don't have money to expand the food program to all the elementary schools. We've seen Book Buddies come up here and not be funded with actual, like, they get some funding, but they've said that they would do more if they had more funding. And then I think it was actually the public hearing dedicated to the CEA collective bargaining, but you had a lot of parents come up here for a summer band camp that was now not funded. I feel like we're misaligned in our priorities if we're gonna not have a conversation about these interest revenue overruns that are likely, I would say, I'd bet my paycheck on it that they're gonna likely go over, and say, how do we look at this and how do we allocate this wisely rather than just building up the reserves? But I mean, if we can take that as an ask, I think it would be wise at the end of March to say, we're 1 quarter through. If it runs, then let's have that discussion and say, that gets us ahead of the 2026-2027 school year, and say we've said we're short on all these things, rather than have a whole discussion about where we're short on revenue. Let's put some of that additional revenue that we don't see in our budget that's likely to come.
I see Dr. Phillips nodding.
I am,
But he's
I am
thinking.
taking
okay.
down notes.
Okay.
I understand your request to look at that, what our revenues are, and we should know with more certainty in March than what we know today, certainly what the rest of the year is gonna look like. Some of that depends on whether or not we purchase a treasury. If we purchase a treasury, we can tell you almost to the penny what we're gonna bring in interest. There's some other things that change throughout the course of the year, but this year is just a little bit unique in that additional revenues will actually just decrease the negative impact on the cash balance during 2026, unless the revenues from other sources also exceed our expected, and we, at some point in the year, realize we may end the year in the black as opposed to in the red. Does that make sense?
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on item E? It's good discussion. Okay, I think I have a motion and a second to approve item 7E, resolution to adopt the 2026 budget.
Yeah, real quick, I do have one more thing. I asked a couple of questions. One of the questions was around the operations salary increase, and I think that's like around 7%. Is that? That's what I heard. So I heard we were not adding people, but we were raising our salaries by 7%, 6.9. And I just wanted to highlight that Bureau of Labor Statistics for Indiana shows that 2.9 is the Consumer Price Index. I also saw on Columbus, Indiana Chatter, somebody sent me that there was a highlighted comments about city council. And so the fire department, police department, both got raises of about 3%. City employees, 2.7%. City council, 2.7%. And the mayor, 2.7%. And I still am not understanding how the city looked at a 3% raise. We're paying teachers 1.5% more, but then we're gonna give another group of people 7%. That just doesn't feel, I use the term equitable. That doesn't feel equitable to have operations. Now, granted, there's lots of people doing lots of hard work. Not going to discount that at all. But they're going to get a percentage-wise a 4.6 times greater raise than what their teaching counterparts are. How do we justify that?
So, sorry, Dr. Bozeman, I'm gonna jump in there again. So we intend, the next board meeting, as we usually do, the meeting after the collective bargaining agreement has been approved, we bring to the board approval of classified staff and administrator increases for that same 2-year period of time. And what we have done for the last 2 contracts with classified staff is what we also intend to do this time, which is the average teacher percentage increase for that school year is what we will request for the July 1st of 2026 increase for classified staff. So that's 1.5%. They this past July 1st, received an increase of 3%, which was the average teacher increase for the 24-25 school year. Prior to that, it was actually I believe 8.3%, because that's what the average teacher increase was for the 23-24 school year. So the requested, the amount on the salary line for the operations fund does not just reflect that 1.5%. classified staff members also receive an experience step if they are in their first 10 years with us. What we have seen, thankfully, as a result of the actions of this board and the support of our community, is in 2021 and in 2022, we made a dramatic changes to our classified staff pay. In June of 21, the board heard a request to increase classified staff pay by 9%. I think I heard Ms. Wielden refer to it earlier as the staffing crisis of 21 and 22. So in 2021, Dr. Pleak and myself did a presentation saying we need to dramatically address our classified staff salaries. I think at the time we were offering teaching assistants somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 an hour to start if they were in their first year, and we were not getting applications for any positions. The board, we increased that, all the classified staff salaries in 21, in that July of 21 timeframe. Then spent the better part of the next year really doing a deep dive position by position, and presented that in June of 2022. And then the board took action on that. It was a more specific, we found specific positions that were underpaid relative to their peers in other school districts. Those ranged from 6% increases up to 25% increases. Since that time, classified staff had gotten the same percentage increase as teachers have gotten in their contract on July 1st, each of those following July 1st. What we have seen is such a positive, dramatic response to that I think Dr. Bozeman shared a week or two ago with us. Now, I'm going to throw some bad luck on this, but we have applications for custodians right now that don't have a position, and that's never happened before. We have teaching assistants, bus drivers, custodians, technology employees that have stayed with BCSE to the extent that they're advancing on that experience scale at a rate that we had not seen in the past. So we had a larger proportion of people in that year one column than 3-4 years ago than what we have today. What that has done is, of course, increase the cost of employing the same number of people, or in this case, it's a lot more people than what it was 3 years ago, because we were also using Manpower, a temporary agency, to staff a very large proportion of our custodians. Again, today we have more. So I said all that to say, to obviously explain why that number is more than 1.5% or more than the average of that 3% and 1.5%. It's because people are staying in their positions. They're not missing as many days. Obviously, as a result of that, at least I believe it's a result of their commitment to BCSE, the fact that BCSE is committed to them, that we were named in the Forbes best places to work just a few weeks ago. And I say we, graciously putting myself in the same group of people who are employees of this district, because I think I'm looking over at Ms. Keel right now, at Mandy, and thinking when she comes into her classroom and that same custodian has been there for 3 years cleaning her room, and she's able to come into a room that's completely clean, she feels better about being a teacher in the district. And she feels better about her relationship with the custodian that works there. And he or she feels better about cleaning Ms. Keel's room every day. It's not a custodian who did a day shift over at Schmidt and then has to come and do the night shift at Southside in the evening because we don't have that position filled. It's not a temporary that keeps turning over. Same thing with our teaching assistants. We have actually people apply and you fill an opening for a teaching assistant relatively quickly. It makes it a better place to work. And all of that then translates to better outcomes for our students. So anyway, that was more than just the explanation of the number, but the number reflects that more people are applying, more people are filling and staying in those positions, and that just means that they're more expensive.
So a couple things. One, when I asked the question and got the answer, the answer was not because of more people. It was because the salaries went up by that percent. Number two, I absolutely don't have an issue, again, right, with a custodian that's been here for 5 years. But if the custodian that's been here 5 years is getting just call it a 7%, because I don't know what the individual is getting. I know the group average is 7%. What about a teacher that's been here 15 years that's only going to get 1.5%? So I think that's, for me, where I'm struggling a little bit with this. The other thing on a budget that I have a big question on that I did not get answered is our budget went down almost $6 million. I've not heard, are we employing fewer people, and what services are we no longer providing? So less money means we have either less people or we have less services, and I never got an answer to that. So I'd like to understand a little bit about what it is that we're not going to provide to the community because we have less money.
The couple of positions that we did not fill that I can think of right now were not a dramatic impact on the budget because one of them was 100% grant funded. The other one was filled with a less experienced teacher in a different position outside of the UDL coordinator position that had been there before. Outside of that, the most dramatic impact on the budget is that the board, over the last couple of years, because of our large cash balance, had budgeted large capital expenditures that were one-time expenditures to draw down the balance without committing ourselves to a budget deficit. And so those were in place in the 2025 budget. They're not in place in the 2026 budget. So that 5.8, the largest proportion of it is the change in the capital expenditures that were one time. Dr. Bozeman also dramatically reduced the capital expenditures. Usually, the board over the last several years had put $2 million towards improvements like painting, carpet, just simple keeping your square footage up to date in your buildings, clean and up to date. Because we're putting so many millions of dollars into all of our elementaries when we're finished with these projects, reduced that amount from $2 million to under $500,000. $450,000. So that's another $1.5 million that doesn't impact programming. It means that that carpet might not get replaced for a couple of years until we get to that section of Mount Healthy or Taylorsville, but it doesn't impact programming. Those are some of the things from Mr. Brinegar's last presentation that I think of right off the top of my head. Are there others, Dr. Bozeman or Mr. Brinegar, that I'm not thinking of? But essentially, again, there's no programs that have been eliminated. There's been one position that was 100% grant funded that was eliminated that was under the wellness umbrella and went around and did some drug prevention training and elementary training for elementary teachers around some of the wellness work in the district. That's the position that was not filled. Looking at Dr. Stahlbaum, thinking I don't want to say that that's the only one and misspeak and have someone, but those are the UDL district UDL coordinator position is one that we shifted into a building in a different position at a lower rate of pay, and then that other position, that person left the district for another opportunity, and we did not refill it. Outside of those two, I cannot think of any programs or positions that have not been ones that we would intend to refill, even if it were empty at this point in time. Again, we as a district, as the administrative team, working with others in CEA and others, are looking for every opportunity to save for next school year.
Okay. And I think I just want to come back to a point that Dr. Bozeman made earlier. Tonight, we are approving a budget which includes the bargaining unit output that we discussed earlier today. Next meeting, we will look at the proposed percentage salary increase for our operations and administrative staff. And we will approve that separately in our next meeting, because it always follows by 1 month in approval of the teachers' union contract.
Yes, that's correct. Classified, which a lot of those are operations, but
Yep.
classified, yes.
Okay.
So the
So-
7%, is that tonight or next time?
The full budget you're voting on is tonight, and then next time will be the proposal for the classified administrators' special contracts.
And we are approving a max rate, a max budget, and a max levy for those 5 categories that were presented to us in our board packet.
That's correct, yes.
Not individual lines necessarily, but those maximums, not to exceed. Okay. Any other questions or comments on item 7E, 2026 budget?
I just want to follow up on one thing. Dr. Phillips, if we can get, I had a similar question. I know we talked right before the meeting about the 6.9%. If we could just get, with the next meeting, right, let's not double work. You're going to get the stuff for the classified staff, but on the stuff that we can't see, right, because we only approve the ones that have a contract year round. So, right, you're also going to say, it would be great to be able to say, here is the totality of the 1.5 for all classified staff on a 1-year contract, administrator positions, whatnot. Here's the total amount that we're giving in additional step increases. Because it sounds like you're talking about there's three elements to the 6.9%. There's the 1.5 that you're giving. There's the steps that are on this 10-step solution that we have that I wasn't aware of prior. And then you had vacancies that, because we're using real run rate budgets, not total budgets and total spend, that there's a vacancy assumption that wasn't known to, at least wasn't known to me prior to this vote. So I think if we had all 3 of those, it would be much easier to explain, because if the increase is 1.5, which is what I believe it to be now, then the other 2 are easy bridges to explain to the 6.9%.
Yeah, I'm struggling a lot tonight just because I don't think that anything's been described to us in that level of clarity. I know I'd asked a couple of times to have a special meeting. I know we had a meeting for policies, but we couldn't have a meeting for this at the level of detail that would have described that, so that we could walk in here tonight and understand it better, right? And so if that's the case, I will be much more likely to vote yes tonight than what I had when I arrived, which was just seeing somebody getting 7% and teachers getting 1.5%. And all I've heard for the last, every conversation I've had is teachers don't get paid enough. And, you know, I understand the state only has so much money, yet they have an overrun, but the state only has so much money, and the 1.5 is where we land. So that's why, to me, it didn't seem fair, but if that's how it is, then I'll be more likely to vote yes, so.
Are there any other questions or comments tonight before we vote on item 7E, resolution to adopt 2026 budget? Okay. All those in favor of approving item 7E, resolution to adopt 2026 budget, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Budget passes 7-0.
Thank you. And then last, request approval of item 7I. These are additional resolutions. It's a 2-meeting process to adopt bonds. So last board meeting, you voted on the first step. This is the same item or similar items requesting approval for item 7I for 2025 GO bonds.
I move that we approve item 7I, the GEO bonds final resolution.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nellen and Mr. Glick. Are there any questions or comments on item 7I? Okay. All those in favor of approving item 7I, our GO bond final resolution, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Motion carried 5-2. The 2 were Mr. Schultz and Mr. Glick, were nays. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
evening. Thank you. The Human Resources recommendations consist of 1 resignation, 2 appointments, and 6 leaves of absence. There are no additional personnel recommendations this evening. I request that you please approve items 8A and B as presented.
I move that we approve items 8A and B at this time.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Glick and Mr. Major. Are there any questions for Dr. Stahlbaum? Okay. All those in favor of approving items 8A and B as presented, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Board input and review. Ms. Lloyd, can I start with you, please?
Sure. I don't have a lot, just thanks to the teachers and principals and staff that were here tonight to go over the Envision 2030 project. It's really nice that they are participating at the level they are, even though I know their time is not of the essence. So thanks to them. And just thinking about the students and staff that were involved in today's accident, sending them well wishes.
So you all got to hear some good news today about the Health Trust, and I just wanted to make sure that being on the Health Trust, I want to recognize some people. So the team worked really hard to keep the premium increase as low as possible without compromising any of the benefits that would be received. It takes a lot of work to do that. You have to look at a lot of scenarios, and there's a lot of discussion that takes place. And so luckily, we were able to be at 0. I can tell you from my experience, my work was up 3 to 4% for interest premiums for next year. So not everywhere is going to be as lucky as we are, and I wanted to make sure that I recognize Mr. Green, Mr. Schoaf, Mrs. London, Mrs. Skinner, along with myself on the trust, and then also supporting cast of Dr. Bozeman, Mr. Brenniger, Mrs. Thompson, and Mrs. Downen, and the team that supports us from JA Benefits. I think they're kind of the unsung heroes of this because they've done a lot from a data analytics perspective to work with some different groups to try and find the best path forward for us to end up at 0. And then the last piece that also helps us significantly is Dr. Klein and the nurses at the clinic. So I want to thank all of them for all the work they've done. And if you are a insurance user, if you see any of those people, please tell them thank you for their work. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank the board for their endorsement of the collective bargaining agreement this evening. It was an honor to represent the board as a part of that process. The folks in the room, there's an old saw that you know it's a good compromise if nobody's happy with the final decision. And I think it's a really bad thing to say, and it does not apply in this instance. In this instance, we were able to put students first, direct money to the most important places, and the representatives of the Columbus Educators Association, representatives of BCSC came to a good decision that you all voted for tonight. So thank you, and thank them very much.
Thank you. I have a couple of things I wanted to point out. On October 22nd, so this Wednesday, we are going to have the groundbreaking for the new elementary school. It's at 3:30. So I encourage people that have been following Envision 2030 to head out there and go to that. I think this weekend we have North boys doubles in tennis playing for state championship. So I want to recognize Teddy Littrell and Vince Sass. Allison Meyer, who is a STEM teacher in our corporation, is one of lots of people coordinating and supporting the Girl Up event this coming Friday at North High School. So this is where I think there's about 140 girls that are enrolled to go do an evening of STEM fun. They do cooking, they do building, they do graphics, they do all kinds of things. It's very energizing. So thank you for all of the work that's going into that. And then my heart just goes out to our bus driver tonight. Just think about what that one adult on the bus with all of those kids in an accident was kind of going through, and they have a really tough job. So my heart goes out to them. I hope they get some good rest and an easier day tomorrow for sure.
I want to thank Mr. Stenner and the administration representatives and the Columbus Educator Association representatives for the hard work and time they put into coming up with a collective bargaining agreement. I know besides the financial constraints, over the years the state has put on time constraints, and I just appreciate how much you got done in the time that you had to do it. So thank you for that. Also, another place that really came out tonight where we have CEA and teachers and administrators working together is the designs for the updated schools. Mr. Stenner and I happened to do our Mount Healthy visit when Ms. Keel and Dr. Bozeman were doing their initial information gathering from the teachers. And it really encourages me to see in this corporation, while we don't always necessarily agree, but to see the administration and the teachers working together on important things like that. And I also have to say, we have some challenging buildings, but at the top of that list is Mount Healthy, and I am excited to see how it looks like the plan took care of the things that we heard at that meeting, and I'm sure came up at other meetings, that teachers have worked hard to overcome the situation they're in, and I think this will help them to actually improve the situation.
Thank you, Mrs. Wielden, for the call on tennis. I'm lacking on the smaller sports, especially after the last 2 weeks of sleeping on a cot in my office, watching a dryer throughout the entire night. One call out I'd like to give to Columbus East Wrestling Coach Cooper. Chris was inducted last week into the Indiana High School Wrestling Coaches Association Hall of Fame for all of his endeavors and successes over the last 23-ish years, I believe. I think my sophomore year was his first year there. And he's done nothing but build that program to be a powerhouse in the state, led him to first state championship dual-wise, and led us to multiple state champions for Columbus East. And this year, pending injuries and recovery, should be a really fun year to watch for East. And North doesn't have some bad wrestlers either. They're going to have to be pretty competitive as well. And final call out for East Wrestling. Chris had posted 21 wrestlers on his team, carried an A- or better GPA through the first 9 weeks, which he's pretty well known for a lot of academic all-state guys as well. Football sectionals is coming up. It starts this week. North and East both have bye weeks, and so they get a nice little welcome break. East doesn't know who they're going to play. Probably going to be Whiteland if I had to guess. And that will be next Friday. And then North will play Franklin Central at Franklin Central next week as well. Unfortunately, soccer-wise, had really tough draw. It's a really tough sectionals. Nationally ranked teams in their sectionals, and went toe-to-toe. North competed very well and came up short. And since you walked in, back in, Gene, had a little thought when we were looking through the East renovations. For anybody who's shown livestock in the 4-H or anywhere else, since the ag and cosmetology is going to be in the same realm, maybe a little collaboration with pet grooming standards or animal science there with cosmetology and ag, just food for thought. So.
Want to welcome everybody back from a fall break. I hope everybody's well rested. I know my kids were jumping to get up at 6:30 this morning for the bus. But it was nice to see Miss Pat, and my thoughts are with every bus driver right now, especially given that, and just being able to be with all those kids. I also want to thank the CSO and the design teams and Dr. Bozeman. I think it says a lot for the school corporation that we have prioritized the Title I schools, that we've prioritized the county schools that typically would get, I remember coming from Taylorsville and last one to get a playground upgrade, last one to get this upgrade. I don't think Taylorsville's honestly been touched in the past 20 years outside of the expansion in the late 90s. There's been a couple cosmetic changes here and there, but it's great to see that BCSC is prioritizing those schools first, and I think they definitely needed it. And I appreciate Dr. Bozeman taking my feedback on Mount Healthy and Taylorsville and others. It's been, I mean, you've been an open door in being able to provide feedback, so I appreciate that and your team. I also want to thank a local group, Hoosier Action. I know a few of us from the board and the administration met with some local citizens on their feelings about education and educational issues. So it was good to be able to get their perspectives on it as well. So thanks for that group for coordinating that.
Okay.
Ms. Whelan, I just want to add congratulations to all the staff and everyone for a successful first quarter. The first quarter is over, and every time we have a break and we come back, I'm thankful when everyone comes back safely and we have everyone back in school on Monday. So it was a safe fall break following a successful first quarter.
Okay, schedule coming up. We have a special board meeting on October 29th at 5 o'clock in the terrace room. So it's this room. Then following that, we will have an executive session. So that will be up in the boardroom and that will not be open to the public. And on November 17th, we will have our next regular board meeting here in the terrace room. Okay. And don't forget Wednesday, once again.
Oh, that's my cousin.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.